I never really believed in gut feelings until the day my life as I knew it came crashing down. It wasn't one moment that broke me. It wasn't a loud fight or a shocking confession. It was a slow, creeping realization, something that gnawed at me over time, but I ignored it. Maybe because I didn't want to face the truth. I knew she was acting differently. But what relationship doesn't have its ups and downs, right? She seemed distracted, always on her phone. But hey, life gets busy. Work, friends, errands. We all have our little distractions. I told myself I was overthinking it, that everything was fine. But the cracks were there, waiting to deepen. It all started with something small. I was sitting at the kitchen table, working on my laptop, when she walked in, her phone in hand. She looked at it for a second, then quickly slid it into her pocket, too fast for it to be normal. Normally, she'd leave her phone on the counter, letting it buzz away as she went about her business. But this time, she seemed careful, and I noticed. I tried to brush it off. It could be nothing, I thought. I was just being paranoid. But then I saw her delete a message one night, in the corner of my eye, when I was walking into the living room. She didn't know I was there, but I saw her quickly swipe across her screen and delete something, her face going momentarily pale as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. That's when my gut told me something wasn't right. That night, I asked her, "You've been acting a little weird lately. Everything okay?" She laughed it off, told me I was imagining things, that I was stressing over nothing. And maybe I was. I wanted to believe it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, I noticed she had deleted the entire conversation from her phone, even though I had seen it just the day before. It was subtle, too subtle for anyone else to notice, but I did. And that's when I began to wonder, was she hiding something from me? I didn't confront her. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I wasn't the type of guy to just accuse someone without proof, even though I had this nagging suspicion. But then, the universe seemed to conspire against my hesitation. I came home from work late one night. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her face bathed in the soft light from the screen. I noticed the same pattern again. She would open a message, then quickly delete it, as though trying to erase every trace of the conversation. The sudden, sharp motion of her thumb across the screen sent a chill through me. This wasn't normal. This time, I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers. I needed to know what was going on, even if it meant risking everything. So, I did what I swore I'd never do. I picked up her phone when she went to the bathroom. She never locked her phone. That was one thing I could always count on. She trusted me. But trust is a fragile thing, easily shattered. I scrolled through her messages, heart pounding in my chest, praying that I was wrong. But I wasn't. I found her conversation with him, the one she had been erasing. The messages were sweet, personal, and oddly familiar, like something a couple would share. I froze when I read the line. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I've been missing you." My stomach churned. I wasn't just dealing with flirtation. This was something else. This was a full-blown affair. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just the words that hit me the hardest. It was the realization that she had been deleting these messages every single time she thought I was near. Each text, each moment of connection with him was hidden, erased like it never happened. She thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. And now I knew. I stood there, staring at her phone, a sinking feeling filling my chest. I didn't know what to do with the flood of emotions hitting me. Anger, confusion, betrayal. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living in this lie. When she returned to the room, I acted calm. I put the phone back on the counter, acting like nothing was wrong. But inside, everything had shifted. I had all the proof I needed, and yet, I said nothing. For the rest of the evening, I sat quietly next to her, my mind racing, trying to figure out what my next move would be. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the messages, about the lies, and about how I had been living in the dark. I couldn't shake the image of her face, the guilt in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. It was there, hidden behind every smile, behind every excuse she made. The next day, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I needed to confront her, to get the truth out in the open. But when I did, she denied everything. She tried to tell me I was imagining things, that the texts were meaningless, that it wasn't what it looked like. But I could see the panic in her eyes, the way she fumbled for an explanation. I didn't believe her. Not anymore. Instead of arguing, I quietly left the room and went to my office. I pulled out the divorce papers I had been drafting in secret for the past few weeks. I had already prepared them, just in case. When I returned, she was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone, still oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Without saying a word, I handed her the papers. Her eyes widened as she looked up at me, her face pale. For the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. But there was no turning back now. The truth had been exposed, and she couldn't erase it this time. She kept deleting messages, so I deleted her from my life with divorce papers. The silence in the house was deafening. She sat there, holding the divorce papers in her hands, her fingers trembling. For a moment, neither of us moved. I could hear her breath hitch, like she was waiting for me to change my mind, to take it back. But there was no going back now. I had all the proof I needed. I wasn't going to be manipulated, lied to, or made to feel like I was the crazy one anymore. I had been patient, trusting her through every little change, every little oddity in her behavior. But this was too much. The constant deleting of messages, the secrecy, the lies, it was more than I could take. "You're really doing this?" she finally whispered, her voice shaking. I couldn't tell if it was anger or fear in her eyes. Maybe both. She had never looked at me like this before. She looked like a stranger, her face twisted with disbelief. "I don't know what you expected me to do," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've been hiding things from me. You've been deleting your messages like I wouldn't notice. How am I supposed to trust you after that?" She stood up, her hands clenched into fists, her face flushed with frustration. "You're overreacting. It's not what you think. This is all just a misunderstanding." She was desperate now, trying to find any way to explain away the undeniable truth I had uncovered. But nothing she said could erase the fact that she had betrayed me. "I'm not overreacting, Vanessa. I've seen the texts. I know what's been going on, and I'm done pretending I don't." I could feel the weight of the words sinking in. This was the end. Her face fell, the anger draining from her expression as she realized there was no way out of this. She had hoped, I guess, that I wouldn't catch on, that the small deletions and little lies would go unnoticed. But they didn't. I had been paying attention. I'd noticed everything. And now, there was nothing left but the truth. "I loved you," I said quietly, my voice breaking for the first time. "I really did. But now, I don't even know who you are anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I had let my guard down too many times, and I wasn't going to make that mistake again. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words coming out like an afterthought. But the apology felt hollow, meaningless. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded like she was trying to save herself. "I need you to leave," I said, my voice cold. "I can't do this anymore." She didn't protest, didn't beg. She just nodded, her face pale as she grabbed her things and left. The door slammed behind her, and the house was silent again, but this time, it was a different kind of silence. It was the kind that comes after something is broken beyond repair. And just like that, she was gone. The moment the door slammed behind her, something inside me clicked. I didn't feel anger. Not at first. I felt numb, like the life had been drained from my body. I stood there, in the middle of the living room, the divorce papers still in my hand, staring at the empty space where she had just been. For a second, I questioned everything. Had I done the right thing? Should I have given her a chance to explain? But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. There was no explanation that would change what I had seen, what I had felt. She had betrayed me, and trust, once broken, can't simply be repaired with empty words. I walked over to the window and looked out, but my mind wasn't on anything I could see. I kept thinking about her face when I handed her those papers. That look of disbelief, as if she couldn't fathom that I had finally caught on. But more than that, I kept thinking about the messages. Those sweet, intimate words she had sent to someone else. I had known something was wrong for weeks. The little changes in her behavior, the way she started to pull away from me, the late nights at work, the friends she always seemed to be busy with. But nothing could have prepared me for the truth. She had been seeing him. The guy she'd been deleting messages from, the one I had never even known existed, had taken her away from me long before I had ever caught on. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I stared at the papers. The weight of what I had just done settled on my shoulders, heavy and suffocating. I had filed for divorce, not out of anger, but out of necessity. I couldn't keep living in a marriage where trust was a foreign concept. I tried to tell myself that I was doing the right thing, that this was the end of a toxic chapter in my life. But there was still that lingering feeling, the one that makes you question if you could have done something differently. Could I have confronted her sooner? Should I have been more open to the possibility that she might be hiding something? These questions didn't have easy answers. The house felt empty without her. For years, this had been our home. Now it felt like a prison. I tried to focus on anything other than the silence. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my own breath. All of it was maddening. I didn't know what came next. The future felt uncertain, like a fog I couldn't see through. But one thing was clear. I couldn't go back. There was no going back to the way things were. The betrayal was too deep. The lies too numerous. I had to keep moving forward, even if I didn't know where that road would lead. I grabbed my phone and texted my best friend, Paul. He had been my confidant for years, and now, more than ever, I needed someone to talk to. She's gone. I finally did it. The reply came almost instantly. I'm so sorry, man. You did what you had to do. I'm here for you, whenever you need me. That small message gave me a little comfort. But in truth, I didn't know what I needed right now. I didn't know if I needed time to heal, or if I just needed a distraction. I couldn't even tell if I was sad, angry, or relieved. What I did know was this. She had deleted all those messages, but she couldn't delete what she had done. She couldn't erase the trust she had shattered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control again. I had been living in the shadows of her lies for so long, and now that she was gone, I could finally breathe. It's funny how quickly the silence becomes deafening when you're alone. At first, it felt almost like a relief. I could move around the house freely, without her constant presence hovering over me. No more pretending to be okay. No more silencing the nagging voice that had been growing louder and louder in my head. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without wondering if she was lying to me. But then the loneliness started creeping in. It wasn't immediate, it took time. But as the evening settled in and the house grew darker, I found myself standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the place where she used to sit. The spot on the couch, the throw blanket she always used, the coffee mug she left scattered around the house. It all felt like someone else's life, not mine. Not anymore. I thought about the good times, before all of this. There had been moments, flashes of happiness that were so pure I could almost feel them again. I remembered our weekend trips, the laughter, the inside jokes. There were nights we stayed up late, talking about everything and nothing, like we had all the time in the world. We were happy then, or at least, I thought we were. I thought she was. But now, all those memories seemed tainted. How many of those moments had been fake? How much of it was just her pretending? I tried to hold on to those better times, but with every passing second, the reality of what she had done pushed them further away. I grabbed my phone and opened my messages. I had one unread text from Paul. You good, man? I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the keyboard. How could I explain what had just happened? How could I put into words the weight of what I was feeling? The shock had faded, but the pain was still there, like a dull ache in the background. I texted back, yeah, I'm fine. It's a lot to process. Paul replied quickly, I can only imagine. If you need to talk, I'm here. I didn't know if talking would help. What was there to say? She had betrayed me. I'd caught her red-handed. She'd deleted everything, deleted me, from her life long before I ever had a clue. I was no longer her husband. I wasn't even a thought in her mind. As the night wore on, I realized just how empty the house had become. I moved around mechanically, cleaning up the kitchen, folding laundry, the things I usually did, but now it all felt hollow. Every little task reminded me that she wasn't here anymore. There was no laughter filling the air, no warm presence beside me. I thought about how she left. The way she walked out, without a single word of protest, as if she knew the game was up. The fear in her eyes, the way she tried to justify it all, even though she knew I had caught her. I couldn't help but wonder if she'd already checked out of our marriage long before I found out. Had she been planning this? Or had it just happened? Had she been feeling for him before I ever knew? I closed my eyes and tried to stop the thoughts from swirling. I had to keep it together. I couldn't fall apart now, not after everything I'd just done. I had made the decision to move on, to leave her behind, and I wasn't going to second-guess myself. But there was something inside me, deep down, that was still holding on. I hated myself for it. I hated that, even after everything, part of me still wanted to understand why. Part of me wanted her to explain herself, to tell me that it was all a mistake, that she was sorry. But the rational part of me, the part that had filed those papers, knew that there was no explaining away the lies, the betrayal. I stood in the living room again, staring at the spot where she used to sit. And for the first time since I handed her those papers, I allowed myself to think about her, the real her. Not the version I'd built up in my mind over the years, not the perfect wife I wanted her to be, but the woman who had betrayed me. And I realized something. I didn't need her to explain. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need anything from her anymore. She had already taken everything I was willing to give. I just needed to move on. And moving on meant closing this chapter completely. I looked around the house one last time, taking in the space we had shared. And then, as the realization settled in, I made a vow to myself. I wasn't going to let her haunt me anymore. I wasn't going to waste any more of my life asking why or wondering what I could have done differently. It was over. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of the future on my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a chance for something new. The next few days were a blur. The house felt emptier than I could have imagined. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind through the cracks of the windows, felt like a constant reminder of what had just happened. I couldn't escape it, not even for a moment. I spent most of the time in my office, trying to distract myself, but the silence was overwhelming. I kept thinking about how everything had unraveled, how I'd trusted her, how I had believed in us, only to find out that she had been erasing parts of her life, erasing me from it, long before I even noticed. The images of her, those sweet, loving moments we shared, felt tainted now, like I had been living in a lie. There were moments when I wanted to call her, to ask for answers, to hear her side. But every time I reached for my phone, I stopped myself. I wasn't that man anymore. The one who begged for explanations, the one who settled for crumbs when he deserved a feast. I had made my choice, and I had to stick to it, even if it hurt. The thing is, I didn't realize how much it was hurting me until I woke up one morning and found myself staring at my phone. The screen lit up with a notification. Her name. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to look, but somehow, my hand reached out and unlocked it. It was a message from her. Just 3 words. I'm sorry. Please. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. She was reaching out, after everything. I couldn't believe it. After all the lies, the texts I had seen, the months of pretending everything was fine, now she was sorry? I felt anger rise up in me, a sharp, bitter taste in the back of my throat. She was sorry? Was she sorry for getting caught? Was she sorry for the lies, the betrayal? Or was she just sorry that her perfect little world had come crashing down? I put the phone down, pacing the room. I didn't want to respond. I didn't want to let her back in. But that voice, the one that had been whispering doubts into my mind ever since I'd handed her those divorce papers, started to grow louder. Maybe it's worth talking to her. Maybe you can fix this. Maybe you should give her a chance to explain. But then I remembered the texts. The ones she deleted. The lies she told me every time I asked. I couldn't let myself forget that. So, I left her message unread, and I tossed my phone aside. I wasn't going to be dragged back into the cycle of uncertainty. If she truly cared, she wouldn't have erased those moments in the first place. But the struggle wasn't just in the decision. It was in the aftermath. My heart still ached. I still wanted answers. But I knew, deep down, that no matter what she said, it wouldn't fix the damage. It wouldn't restore the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything that led up to it. The little signs, the secrets, the manipulations. It had been building for so long, and I had ignored it, hoping that the good would outweigh the bad. But now, I couldn't pretend anymore. I stood by the window, staring out at the empty street, the weight of the decision settling in. I had made the right choice. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and I wasn't the person who would keep accepting lies. I wasn't going to wait for the inevitable heartbreak to come again. The days blurred into one another after she left. It wasn't like the movies, where the heartbroken man sits alone in a dark room, drowning in his sorrow. It wasn't that dramatic. But there was a quiet, unsettling stillness in the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. I found myself retracing our every step. The places we'd gone, the dinners we'd shared, the little things she used to do, leaving her coffee mug on the kitchen counter, her shoes scattered by the door. At first, It felt like a puzzle, like a mystery I was trying to solve. Was there something I missed? Was there something I could have done differently? But as time passed, I realized something else. The pain of it all was more than just the betrayal. It was the sense of not knowing who she truly was anymore. She had always been so certain, so confident. The woman I loved was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, sharp, magnetic. I had admired her for it. But now, looking back, I saw how much of her was just a performance, a mask she wore to hide what was really going on. It wasn't just the affair. That was the surface-level wound. The real damage was deeper. It was the realization that the woman I had trusted, who I had believed in, had been hiding parts of herself from me the entire time. The messages she deleted weren't just messages. They were pieces of a life she had been living without me, one that I hadn't even known existed. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. How much of me had been wrapped up in her? How much had I ignored to keep the peace, to pretend everything was okay when I felt something gnawing at me inside? She had made me question my instincts, my ability to trust. It was like waking up from a long sleep only to find that everything you thought you knew was a lie. Then came the decision I dreaded, the one I knew had to happen but kept putting off. I had to sort through the remnants of our life together. The apartment, the things we had built, the future we had planned. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I felt like I was choking on the weight of it all, trying to figure out what to keep and what to throw away. There was no easy way to start, but I had to. The first thing I tackled was her side of the closet. I opened the door, and there they were. Her clothes, her shoes, the smell of her perfume lingering on the fabric. A pang of loss hit me hard. It was surreal. These things had once belonged to the woman I loved, the woman I thought would be by my side forever. But as I folded each item, as I put her things in boxes, the anger slowly crept back in. I couldn't believe I was standing here, doing this. I was putting away pieces of a life I had been betrayed in, a life I couldn't have imagined would fall apart so easily. I found myself wondering what she was doing. Where was she now? Was she thinking about me? Was she regretting what had happened? A part of me wanted to reach out, to check in and see if she was okay. But I knew that would be a mistake. It would be like throwing myself back into the mess, into the chaos of something that had already been broken beyond repair. I wanted her to reach out. I wanted her to tell me the truth, to apologize in a way that felt genuine. But the reality hit hard. Apologies wouldn't change what she had done. I had already seen the truth. The messages weren't just words. They were a reflection of her choices, her decisions. I took a deep breath and looked around the apartment, trying to take in the silence one last time. This was the moment I had been avoiding for so long. I could either cling to the past, to the memories, to the hope of things getting better, or I could finally let go. And as much as it hurt, as much as I wanted to turn back the clock and pretend nothing had happened, I knew what I had to do. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my lawyer. It was time to move on for good. I never expected to see her again, not like this. The morning started like any other. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through the news, trying to distract myself from the mess that had become my life. My phone buzzed, a message notification lighting up the screen. It was from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it, expecting a random spam message or a sales pitch. But instead, my heart dropped into my stomach. It was from her. "Can we talk?" I froze. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, but I couldn't move. I hadn't heard from her since she left. I had made peace with it, at least I thought I had. But now, just like that, she was back. I sat there, staring at the screen, wondering what she could possibly want. Was this a last-ditch attempt at getting me to change my mind? A way to explain herself? I didn't want to engage, but my curiosity got the better of me. I typed back, "What do you want, Vanessa?" Seconds felt like hours as I waited for her response. Finally, the 3 little dots appeared, and then the message came through. "I need to apologize. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Can we meet?" I thought about it for a moment. I had already made my decision. I had moved on, or at least I was trying to. Why should I let her back into my life after everything? But then, another thought crept in. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to hear her say it, to finally understand what went wrong. Against my better judgment, I agreed. "Fine, but we meet on my terms. No excuses." We arranged to meet at a cafe, the kind of place that felt neutral, nothing too intimate, nothing too cold, just somewhere between. As I drove there, my mind raced. What would she say? What would I say? Was this going to be another round of her apologies and excuses, or was I finally going to hear the truth? When I walked into the cafe, I saw her sitting at a table in the back, looking almost exactly the same as when I had last seen her, just as beautiful, just as composed. But something was different. Her posture was slumped, her eyes dull. She looked up when I approached, but there was no smile, no warmth. Just a cold, hard look that said more than her words ever could. "John," she said quietly, her voice carrying a hint of guilt. "I'm glad you agreed to meet." I took a seat across from her, feeling a strange sense of detachment. "What's this about, Vanessa? You left. You made your choice." She sighed, looking down at the table for a moment before meeting my gaze. "I made a mistake. I know I hurt you. I wasn't thinking, and I can't change that." I clenched my jaw. The words sounded rehearsed, practiced. This wasn't an apology, it was a formality. She had done what she came to do. Check the box. I waited for her to continue, but all she did was stare at me, her eyes searching for something. I didn't give her the satisfaction of reacting. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "I'm sorry, John. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could keep it all under control, keep things separate. But I couldn't, and I didn't want to lose you." I felt nothing. The words felt empty, like echoes of a woman who had already checked out emotionally long before she left. She was still deleting messages, still hiding parts of herself, just like she had when everything fell apart. "I can't do this anymore," I said quietly, standing up. "It's over. You made your choice, and I made mine. I'm not your backup plan, Vanessa. I'm not someone you come back to when it gets too hard. You don't get to erase the past and expect me to just forgive you." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place, regret, maybe, or anger. But there was no sign of the woman I had loved, the woman who had once made me feel seen, understood, important. "You're right," she whispered. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I had to try." I didn't say anything else. I just walked out, leaving her sitting there, alone, the same way she had left me months ago. I didn't look back as I walked out of the cafe. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the final seal on everything that had happened. As I stepped into the cold air outside, I took a deep breath. It wasn't a breath of relief. It was the first breath of freedom I'd taken in months. I had given her everything. Love, trust, a future. And she had taken it all, leaving me with nothing but lies. But the truth was, I didn't need her anymore. I didn't need her apologies or her regrets. What I needed was to move on. I wasn't going to keep letting her hold power over me, even from a distance. It was time for me to take control of my own life again. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding myself. I spent more time with friends, going out, laughing, living. I reconnected with old hobbies I had neglected, started going to the gym again, and even signed up for a weekend class on something I had always wanted to learn. I wasn't just trying to distract myself. I was finally giving myself the life I deserved, the one I had forgotten existed. Meanwhile, Vanessa seemed to disappear from my world entirely. She didn't try to contact me again, not that I was looking for it. It wasn't long before I realized that her absence didn't leave a hole in my heart. It didn't leave a sense of regret or longing. It left space. Space for something new, something better. One evening, while I was out with Paul, I ran into someone unexpected. A woman who had been a colleague of mine years ago, back when I was still in the routine of work and life and marriage. We had shared a few casual conversations, but I never thought much of it. That night, we exchanged numbers and started talking again. Her name was Emily. She was smart, kind, and, most importantly, she wasn't afraid of being honest. With her, everything felt natural, effortless. She didn't need to hide parts of herself or play games. She was real. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself smiling again. Truly smiling, like I hadn't in ages. Weeks passed, and our connection deepened. It wasn't like the whirlwind romance I had with Vanessa, the one that was built on fantasy and hope. This time, everything was grounded in reality. We laughed, we communicated openly, and most importantly, we trusted each other from the start. I found myself thinking back to that day in the cafe when I walked away from Vanessa. I had been so sure, so certain that walking away was the hardest thing I would ever do. But now, looking back, I saw how easy it had been compared to everything I had gained since. Vanessa had disappeared into the life she had created for herself, but it wasn't the fairy tale ending she had expected. Not long after we parted ways, I learned through mutual friends that her new relationship was falling apart. The man she had once been so desperate to keep hidden from me was now showing his true colors. He wasn't the charming figure she had made him out to be. He was selfish, manipulative, a reflection of the same mistakes she had made in our marriage. It wasn't karma in the traditional sense. I didn't wish bad things on her, nor did I take pleasure in seeing her struggle. But I couldn't ignore the fact that she had never truly understood what she had until it was gone. She had deleted everything that mattered, all for a fleeting moment of escape. And now, she was left with the wreckage of her own choices. As for me, I didn't need to seek revenge. The best revenge, I realized, was simply living well. I had reclaimed my life, my peace, and my happiness. Vanessa's actions no longer held power over me, and the life I was building with Emily felt like something I had fought for, not just after a painful loss, but through it. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I was stronger, wiser, and more importantly, I was free. Vanessa's messages had been deleted, but mine were just beginning to be written, and they were going to be good ones.